Gilmore to Andrechuk, shooting, score! Dave Andrechuk hits the 50 mark, down the backing, places him. Holy Mackinac, he's got three!
What is going on, Maple Leaf fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Leafs Lounge, here as always with co-host Justin Kudo. It is Thursday, April 4th. Justin, we've got a pretty action-packed plate here. A lot of things to talk about. Let's get into, I guess, last night's game. Tampa Bay, disappointing coming off the Florida game. So maybe give me your thoughts on, I guess, both games, but with more of a focus on last night in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, after you beat Florida on Monday, you're feeling really good. You're within 4 points of Florida for that home ice in the first round of the playoffs. And after Florida lost on Tuesday in Montreal against the Habs, you're starting to think like ahead. As a Leaf fan, I was like, oh, maybe there's a chance that we get home ice. We just have to take advantage of the rest of our schedule. Then they go out. And I actually thought that the first 40 minutes of the game, we kind of controlled. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think it was a very close competitive game, but yeah, I'm with you. The third period is where it just felt like they were just flat.
I felt like the first 40 minutes, a lot of penalties for both teams, and we can get into the penalty kill power play stuff later, but a lot of special teams, and I just felt like the Leafs were coming out on top in a lot of situations and a lot of scoring chances that they just couldn't beat Vaz on. So, good on Tampa, but it's definitely one the Leafs will look back on if they are within 2 points of moving up in the standings and be like,
agreed.
Man, we're right there.
Yeah. And I think as we kind of we'll take a closer look at kind of like possible playoff matchups, but as it inches a little bit closer to the likelihood of a Florida-Toronto first round, you start to say like how important would getting home ice be? I'm not sure. It would be critical to this team. If you look at their record, they've definitely been a very good road team. So I'm not sure I'd be, really up in arms about having to start on the road versus home. But anyways, I mean, I got some things that from last night's game. Again, Wall first shot on goal in the net. That's tough. And like he's got like luck right now. Like the team obviously doesn't seem to play well in front of him, but overall you can't say that he had a good game. Obviously you're not going to win too many games when your offense gives you only one, but I would say there are probably 2 goals, whether you say you should have had that one headed to Stamkos. I think you got to have
Stamkos and the Paul were the two where you're like, come on.
All 2. Yeah, good point. I didn't love that one. You can always say, well, hey, Stamkos, he's great. He's got a great shot. No. I think you want your goalies to have at least one of those 2. And yeah, it wasn't a great effort, unfortunately.
I will say that I thought Wool made some really good saves because especially in the second and closer to the end of the second period, there was a couple odd man rushes that Tampa had, and especially early in the third as well. Yeah, a couple odd man rushes, 2-on-1s that he was making great reads on, sliding across and making nice saves. So
for sure,
I mean, like Wool had his moments, but it's the up and downs of being a Toronto Maple Leafs goalie, right?
Yeah, and it just kind of like one more, I guess, edge that you got to give to Sammy in that if it is a competition, Sammy probably gained a little bit of traction. We'll see what happens Saturday. I assume Sammy will be in, but if he has a good game against the Habs on Saturday, it's like, okay, does Wall have enough games to prove that he should be the number 1 guy? Like at some point with 7 games left, you got to think Wall maybe gets 3 of them right now. Is he going to show enough to get the net? So we'll have to see. I think kind of the highlights for me, obviously tough to find any when you lose 4-1 to a division rival. But for me, obviously 63 for Matthews. Keeps on rolling. And what a KO from Revo.
Yeah.
How good was that tilt?
That was a great scrap. Oh my. Oh man. And Revo, like once again in these divisional games, he's just showing up, throwing the body, making his presence felt. And in the first period, at one point, he got jumped by like 4 Lightning in the crease. And he gets up and he's like, "You gotta bring more than that."
For sure. I love it. I mean, what does he have? Like 15, 16 hits in these 2 last games against the Florida teams?
Yep.
Like, if you had any doubts about whether Revo should be in the game 1 lineup, you might be, one of those fans who at the earlier point of the year were like, "Oh my God, he's on the ice every time the puck goes in our net." There's no way you can still have that train of thought that I don't want Revo in the game 1 lineup. Like, is that fair?
Yeah, 100% fair. 100% fair.
Yeah.
So, the one thing is that the fourth line now, it's been back-to-back games. They've been out there for a goal against. And, I feel like in both situations, however, it's been more of their deployment by Keefe.
Totally agree.
I mean, against Florida, you put them out there with 2 minutes left defending a lead. That's like asking for something bad to happen. And then last night, you get the whistle, the opportunity to change and put a different line out there against Point, Kucherov, and whoever, Hagel, I think it is. And you pass up on that chance. So then you're left with Kampf, Dewar, Revo, with Lyubushkin and Brody on the back end. And not exactly
ideal.
My favorite, not exactly my favorite 5-sub at all. And 20, probably less than 20 seconds after that face-off, the puck's in the net, and it's David Kampf completely lost around the bottom of the circles, and Braden Point, 50 goal scorer last year, is wide open in front. And nothing Wool can do there.
No.
So
you know what? Like I keep hearing, and it always kind of pains me when I have to hear or watch Keefe and his media availabilities. Like, I don't know. Like, this is where I kind of like don't have any confidence in Sheldon Keefe. There's obviously a lot of historical significance to my perspective on Keefe in terms of him getting out coached. But he like openly admits that he doesn't really believe in matchups. Like, he's not as concerned about who's matched up. He even said with his D pairings, we don't really have like a shutdown pair. Like, it's going to be dependent on who's going in the matchup. It's fair if you don't have a shutdown pair, which I guess is more what he was alluding to. But I'm more worried about the whole, like, he doesn't play into the matchups. And you look at a guy like John Cooper is probably the exact opposite in terms of how he brings a coaching game plan to each game and matchup. Like, and I think when it comes to the playoffs, like, you can't just say, I'm going to put Matthews and Marner out there for 23, 25 minutes and hope they make it work. And I'm not going to be worried about if I constantly put the fourth line out there for defensive zone faceoffs against the opposition's best line, because it's not as important to me. I just can't get behind that an NHL coach could feel that way about the importance of matchups.
And it's like I agree with you, but I'm also not a huge fan of insane matchup hunting. Like, I'm not like the idea of, I remember a couple of years ago when we faced Montreal in the playoffs, there was the idea that Matthews should not be out there against Phil Deneau.
Right.
And I remember they always talked about it, and they were like, Matthews is getting shut down by Deneau. Well, he shouldn't be.
Right.
I know Deneau is a really good defensive center, but Matthews is an elite offensive talent. He will figure it out. Right? Do not change your.
I mean, in that series, you could argue he didn't, but
I would say that don't change the rhythm of your bench and like their shift, and in order to just match up hunt. I feel like it gets extreme sometimes, but and then there's like, I agree that your fourth line should not be out there. If you have the choice, they shouldn't be out there for a defensive zone faceoff against Point and Kucherov.
Right. Yeah, it just feels like sometimes, like, when you look at kind of who's on for an offensive draw, when, maybe if the opposition iced a puck and you maybe have a tired defense or whatever, that whole line for the opposition is tired. And then like somehow like it's like the David Camp line that comes over the boards for the offensive draw. And then on the flip side, as I alluded to, they're on for a defensive draw when it's like, okay, like what is the strategy here or the logic? Where do you as a coach see that you have the advantage? Like, especially when you're the home team and you can maybe dictate who's out there for a face-off, who's out there, you know, on those important defensive draws. You look at it like, yeah, I can't figure that one out. I can't figure out why that was the line you chose. And I find that happens too often. But
yeah,
anyways,
the home last change is something that you have to utilize as a coach. Like that's when you can do your matchups, but that should be more matchup hunting to get your top guys out after maybe like a commercial break against their third line or their fourth line. You know, it shouldn't be I'm going to take off my top. This is where I don't like matchups. Whereas when you take off your top guys in order to avoid their defensive guys, like, no, let your top guys do what they're paid to do.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to hide our top guys. I'm totally with you on that. It's more about like getting the fourth line on at just odd moments in the game where, maybe you have momentum. It's an offensive zone draw. Can we maybe get JT out there and his 58%, 56% face-off efficiency?
Or maybe just even a makeshift line where it's like JT, somewhat Nyes, and McMahon or something, like do like a weird line like that of just guys that are ready to go if there's a little bit of fatigue on the bench.
Yeah, at least kind of throw out guys onto the ice where it's like, if you win the draw, there might actually be an opportunity to put the puck in the net. Whereas when you got Camp, Dewar, and Reaves out there, it's like, cool. If Camp wins the face-off, it's not going in the net. Like, so you're just trying to like maintain or you're just trying to neutralize for that shift. But anyways, so moving on, the one thing I think from one takeaway I had off, I guess, back-to-back games where I haven't really loved his play, and you're going to be like, oh, here he goes again. But the William Nylander conversation for me, I think he's got 1, maybe 2 points in his last 6 games. Hasn't looked very engaged the last 2 games. I know probably shot totals because of the power plays they had will look favorable for him. I think he might have had 5 shots on net, but just seeing too much of the, mostly indifferent play, missed assignments, kind of turnovers, not going hard to get the puck. And one thing I'm seeing right now, he's at 95 points right now.
Mm-hmm.
Might not even get to 100. I know he's only 5 points off. You would think he would. You would think he would, but not a sure thing. And especially, when he signed his contract coming off that early season heater, we were talking about a guy who was on pace for 115, 120, then it was 110. Now he's at 95. Where are you at in terms of his play? Are you still feeling good about the contract? I'm seeing too much of the previous Nylander as opposed to, I think he's really kind of, elevated his game. So, I feel like this is more the fan take. I'm okay with 11.5 because look what he's done this year. Well, now, I don't know. He's kind of more like what he was last year again, which is good.
Well, I don't
Not
know.
Elite, though.
I don't know if you can expect, you didn't pay him 11.5 to play like he did in the first 30 games of the season. No.
You don't think?
If you did, then that was pretty stupid.
And I think it was. I guess if he's a 95-point guy.
I think that with the cap going up, an elite offensive playmaking winger that can score you 35 to 40 goals and get you 90 to 95 points. That's a 8-digit guy.
Yeah, I guess for me, I just kind of question if, I don't know when you look at kind of the top scorers right now and even projecting next 3 or 4 years, if you will see too many guys at that 11.5 number who are as one-dimensional as Nylander in play wing. a lot of those guys getting that money are going to be centers, maybe a couple D-men if their contracts are coming up soon. It just feels like, yeah, and I've kind of been consistent on this. I like what Nylander's done this year in terms of improving some things from his game, but I just feel the last, especially 10 odd games or whatever, a lot of the bad habits have crept in. And for me, and this is kind of more where I want to get your thoughts on it, I worry about, like, right now, I think 5-on-5, Nylander had the second most time on ice after Matthews, which I get it. Without Marner in there, you probably wouldn't expect anything different. But I just worry if that kind of continues into the playoffs where you're throwing him out there as often as you are 5-on-5, and he just isn't really driving offense 5-on-5. I think we talked about it maybe last week where Nylander, through the season, he's about 36% of his total points are via the power play. Compared to Austin Matthews, Matthews is around 27. I think Marner's like low 30s, 32 or whatever. And I'm not as concerned about that power play percentage in terms of his point total, but especially when you have a power play not clicking, despite the one power play goal we got last night, you start kind of looking at Nylander's value, and it's like, dude, like if you're not getting, production 5-on-5, all the other elements of Nylander's game aren't giving me much confidence that he's going to be tilting the ice when he's on.
I have zero worries for playoffs. Like, I'm not going to judge his season off of 6 games.
No, for sure.
I kind of know that, like, Nylander's a streaky player. He's going to have his insane hot streaks where he's going to have 15 straight games with a point. And then there's going to be games like a stretch like this where it's 6 games. And even though I don't think he's played bad in all those 6 games, you're right. He only has 2 points, which in the last 2, you could say he hasn't flashed in. But I feel like in every game, even if he's kind of quiet, there's one shift or a couple plays that he makes. And he's just where you see it. And you're just like, Willie, I just need to see that like more often, not every shift, because it's hard to bring it every shift, but more
very
often.
few do.
He does, like, he shows the flash every game where you're like, oh, he almost just scored a beauty, or it's like, oh, what a pass kind of thing. So I know it's there and he'll find it. He always does in playoffs. So no, I don't really have any worries about Nylander.
Okay. Fair enough. How did you catch that line brawl with the New Jersey Rangers? How crazy was that? I loved it. That
was awesome. Loved it.
I need more of that. In the NHL.
I loved it. Yeah. And I didn't know there was a rule that they kicked everybody out that wasn't the first fight.
That was hilarious seeing like the whole line for both teams just go into the going through the arena there.
2 seconds into the game, you're already down 4 guys on your bench.
Yeah. Okay, boys, I guess we're shortening up the bench now.
They came to the rink 3 hours in advance, did their pregame warm-ups, and 2-second shift out of there.
Yeah, it was for sure a rough night for the hockey purists out there who want fighting out of the game. All everyone's talking about was the Revo fight and the Jersey Rangers line brawl. How everyone, all on Twitter, you got everyone saying, "Oh, you got to take this out of hockey. It's not what it's about." It's like, come on, that's amazing.
I love it.
That's what hockey's all about.
Exactly, because then, like, I look at all these other sports like baseball, basketball, and football, and they're just becoming softer and softer, removing like physicality, and like hockey has to keep this.
You got to keep an element of it. Yeah.
It's what makes us different, like allowing the guys to fight and stand up for their teammates, and the history between the Devils and the Rangers this season with Rempe throwing dirty hits. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
And
it keeps up the rivalries going. It's fun.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
I didn't see a lot of people on Twitter actually bashing it that much, honestly. I saw pretty much everybody was saying this is rock star shit. Love it.
Well,
was only
or perhaps I have to change my timeline or copy your follows in your timeline because I was seeing too much of that.
I did hear on during the Sportsnet intermission when they were talking about it.
Jen
It
was
was, yeah,
against it.
Jennifer Botterill.
Botterill?
Who was a kind of she was
She
kind
hates
of
fighting.
going off against. She doesn't really like a lot of physicality. I remember
No.
they got into a huge beef with Jamal,
DX?
with Jamal Mayers and the other guy.
Oh, right. I remember that one. Yep.
About the
Yep.
Brendan Dillon Kaprizov stuff.
That's right.
And that got heated.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're, I mean, I know she's played the game too, so obviously it has a very qualified perspective. But if you're going to tell like a former NHL player where they actually do have fighting and there is always been that code in the NHL game, it's going to be a very tough argument. And not to say she didn't even have a lot of good points. She did. But telling a former NHL player that, yeah, there shouldn't be any retribution for stuff like that, or you shouldn't expect to have that kind of revenge type antics.
You gotta like,
yeah, I mean, you have that in the recreation. Like I had that in the rec ball hockey leagues I played in, you know, and that's recreational ball hockey where the majority of us are, we got full-time jobs and we're not trying to like really get a black eye going into the office the next day. We're talking about paid professional athletes who know that their livelihood is dependent on how they either respond to maybe one of their teammates who got hit or whatever. So I think it's just an odd take to say, yeah, you can't have that in the game anymore.
I have the same thing. My beer league hockey team is exactly like that as well.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna mess with one of the guys on the team because if something happens, the entire team's ready to go at a moment's notice. It's just it's in the way it is. Of the game, Yeah. If there's no fighting allowed, what's stopping me from, going back and just hacking a guy on the back of the legs? I'm gonna get a 2-minute penalty. Yeah. The guy might get really hurt, and I'm just gonna get a 2-minute penalty for slashing. The other team would come in and beat the crap out of me if I did that. So I'm not gonna do it.
No, exactly. So just kind of like reflecting back on these last two games, if you had to say pick one, more encouraging, positive signs coming out of the Florida win compared to Tampa being maybe a more disappointing, discouraging loss, where would you be there?
The encouraging win against Florida, because
that's
more likely to be our playoff matchup.
Yeah.
And especially since like a lot of fans have the horrors of the Game 5 loss, the entire series really.
Meant more.
It meant more, yeah. And it just shows that we can handle their physicality, which a lot of questions were about last year. And we can handle their dump and chase game as well. Like they do a
lot more than last year for sure.
Yeah, it's just because we're matching their physical level, which is going to keep them from just ramming us into the boards whenever they're forechecking,
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I'm there as well. Obviously recency bias will have a lot of people, crying about the L last night and like, oh my God, this team, I can't trust them. They're a first round exit. But I do think the Florida game showed me a lot more of what they could be compared to the Tampa loss showing me what they can be. I think I'm more kind of encouraged coming out of those two games. Ask us again maybe next week if they have a terrible game Saturday. But I think for right now, Thursday, those two games, that's kind of where I am as well. Was it a shock to you that Morgan Rielly's first game back resulted in a bad defensive effort and a loss?
I can't blame it on Rielly when he was really only out there for one goal against, and I don't even remember which goal it was. I think it might have been the first one on the delayed penalty.
Yeah, he wasn't on for a lot of goals against. I think it was kind of like pretty even. Like Brody was on for one, like McCabe was out there, Lyubushkin. So I think from a defensive standpoint, not sure I'd put it on Brody, but still at 5-on-5, Brody and Riley played the 2 most minutes. Like Riley got a lot of power play time. So that's where his overall time on ice as reflected. But still, 5-on-5, Keefe still went with Riley and Brody, not as a pair, but those 2 guys had the most amount of ice time. And I'm like, how is there no easing Riley in? Like, I don't know. Like, how is he all of a sudden like, yeah, we need him or he should be a D1 guy for us? I'm not there with Riley. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's just they fit him right back into his spot with Lyubushkin. You know, that's kind of going to be their pair going forward, I believe, at least going into playoffs unless something happens.
Yep.
And it's just building that stamina back up since he missed 3-4 games. Just throw him back in there and see if he can find his footing. He wasn't super noticeable, which you want him to be more noticeable because he's an offensive defenseman, but I didn't notice him that much in either end. So
no. And look, it's not like it's like only Riley was bad, you know? So I think to your point, like I'm not going to point the finger at Riley and saying, oh my God, keep him out of the lineup now. He's a liability. Although at 5-on-5, I think you can make the argument that he is kind of a defensive liability. I just kind of worry about, you know, again, maybe Keefe going back to what he feels is old faithful, old reliable as far as defensemen that he wants to see out there. Because I think even last night, Benoit and McCabe were their best D pair. And if you look at kind of how they tilted the ice, shot attempts.
Even I don't think that they played that well either, though.
It was not their best game, but they were the best pair.
McCabe made a brutal error right before the Stamkos goal.
He had a couple,
where he made a very odd choice to step up in the neutral zone and just they blew right by him and it was a 2-on-1 and that's when Stamkos scored.
No, agreed. I mean, and I think last night was definitely not a game where you would find anyone on the blue line that you would say, oh my God, I can't wait to see that guy play the most amount of minutes come playoffs. But like McCabe, he had the best expected goals at over 60%. And then Timmins and Simone Benoit was around like 54%, whereas Riley was below 40. Lyubushkin was the worst performer, below 10%. And again, it's one game, analytics, you kind of throw it out the window, but that's kind of where I'm going with in terms of Benoit and McCabe. They're on ice and kind of how many chances they're allowing. It felt like 5-on-5, they were at least the most solid pair.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I like that pairing together, but one thing that just happens, and he's such an analytics darling, is Connor Timmins. Like, I feel every game this expected goals is always so like much higher than you think. Like, you just
even when he was playing a couple games with Gio, they were actually doing all right.
Always around 53, 54, and you're like, what?
Yeah, and then at the end of the game, you're like, wait, Timmins was in the lineup tonight? I didn't know that.
So,
but it's true.
I don't think he touches playoffs, but it's encouraging to think that, you know, we have this guy really cheap for next year. And then I believe he's RFA after that. So if he can establish himself in everyday lineup next year, value deal, seems like he's always winning his minutes.
Yeah, I'm definitely not opposed if he has to get thrown in there, but I can't get behind putting him into the game one lineup. I know you're not saying that either, but it is kind of encouraging to see where he's at. So
I have a question for you is because we got Edmondson and Liljegren coming back now. Now, it's easy to say that Timmins will come out and Liljegren will go back in at that right D spot. Yes.
Yeah.
But then that leaves Edmondson, who we traded not a pretty penny, but, you know,
a fair bit.
Penny for
third round.
Yeah. How does he get back in the lineup, right? Because I won't say the Leafs are playing stellar defense, like, oh, there's no way we can change up this current D structure, but it's really Benoit, who we just re-signed to a pretty good deal. So I know Tree Living likes him, and he's playing really well. Or Brody, who Keefe is in love with. So
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it right now, like, and I guess it's tough to really predict because we don't know. I mean, it looks like Edmondson will have maybe a full practice tomorrow, potentially. He won't play Saturday. It doesn't sound like Keith kind of suggested he wouldn't, but Edmondson could be back next week.
Mhm.
So if he kind of gets into games and he looks good, like he kind of did pre-injury, I feel he will be in. And then I think it comes down to when will Lily get back in? I think he's a little bit
Really?
further out in terms of his expected return to the lineup based on his injury. He might miss all of next week too. So if
That's
he's
fair.
only
That's fair.
coming back with 1 or 2 games remaining, I don't know if he can do enough to convince Keefe to put him in, unless it's like, oh, wow, like he got out there, played 22 minutes and looked amazing and
I
ran
think
the power play.
Yeah, if the
I don't
power
know.
play is still struggling, no doubt he'll make it back in just as a safety
Yeah.
valve to throw him on PP1 if Riley fails, you know?
Yeah. I think that is his way back in. You know, if they feel like the power play through these next couple games or few games without Lily in there and Riley can't get the power play humming again, yeah, I could see them saying, okay, we need Lily. We need the right shot. We definitely need him in there. And then, yeah, I don't think Simone Benoit is coming out. So it probably comes down to Brody Labushkin because I don't think Edmondson will be out. Like, I
Yeah.
think Edmondson looks better to me than Labushkin does, but I get it. Labushkin, a right shot. I don't know.
I think Labushkin has, like, his numbers would suggest he's played really well since coming over in the trade.
Yeah.
And he had a few injuries along the way. And last night was obviously not his greatest performance.
No.
But I think it would take a lot for even Labushkin to come out of the lineup right now. That's why it's so
You
hard
think?
because I think Keefe has his guys, and even though he showed the tendency to keep Brody out of the lineup for a couple games, can I see him doing it for a playoff series? I just can't.
Well, and not when Brody played the most amount of minutes last night, you
Yeah,
know? Like,
exactly.
especially 5-on-5. Like, it feels like it's a long way to go from Brody is out there in pretty much every situation except power play to, yeah, Brody's a health bomb. Like, I just don't see it. I don't
Mhm.
see it unless you get 78 out of here now.
Yeah.
And it might come to that, but probably not in time for game 1. So I
Yeah.
think Brody will find a way in. But yeah, it's tough. And especially now that the PK is doing a little bit better, playing well, Keefe is
A little bit
absolutely
of a
going to
hot
be
streak.
like, Brody, it's all Brody. He's found his game.
The
It's
thing
like,
is that,
it's
like,
not really.
I knew it was a matter of time that the Leafs PK would get its shit together because
Yeah.
this is a PK structure. Like, Keefe's never had this bad of a penalty kill in his tenure as a Leaf coach. Like, he's always
It
been
hasn't ever been a dominant unit. It's
no, but it's
been
always
middle of the
been
pack.
upper half of the league. Last year
Sure.
it was 12th at
Yeah.
over 80%, which is
Yeah.
like 5 points better than it is right now.
Yeah. No,
'Cause I
it's
think we're
fallen
around
years. No doubt.
76. Like, I think a lot of it has to do with we didn't have the right guys out there for a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And he was searching for the right guys. He lost a lot of his penalty killers in the offseason, Kerfoot, Justin Hall, like a lot of the guys he trusted out there.
Achari and O'Reilly, if we're
Achari,
talking about the end
O'Reilly,
of the year.
Engvall
Yeah.
at the deadline, like guys like that
Yeah.
that they trusted to play a lot of the penalty kill were gone. So
For
it took
sure.
a lot of time to find these new guys. But I talked about it on Tuesday. The Camp Dewar pair, then you run out Holmberg and McMahon. That's a perfect foursome that you can start with. I like the idea of having Yarncroke and Marner come back and adding a little extra
Right.
to it.
That should
And
help.
those 6 guys are your only penalty killers that should be out there, save for maybe the last 10, 12 seconds if you want to do Matthews Nylander.
Nylander. Yeah.
Matthews Nylander at the last couple seconds of the penalty kill to try and get a jump start on the next shift.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to see Nylander as part of the top 4. He was not last night, so it feels like Keefe is coming around, or maybe someone on the bench
I think it's been
that don't do that anymore.
Yeah, I think it's been a while since he's been one of the top guys. I think these 4 have been kind of solidified.
Yeah, because I think he's recognized that Dewar has a lot to offer there, like shorthanded time on ice. It was basically Kampf had the most, then Dewar and Holmberg and McMahon. So exactly kind of as you laid it out. And then Matthews and Nylander had a little bit of time as well. So going forward, I think that's how we should see it. Obviously, you get Marner and Yarncroke in. Does that push out maybe McMahon or Holmberg? Like, however they want to do it, I think they have options now.
I think there's options. Yes. I think if anything, it would kick McMahon down to the third group out.
Could be. I could see that.
And put Marner in there. And then you have the Yarncroke McMahon as the third guys, then Holmberg with Marner. Because I think at no point should Kampf and Dewar be split up at this point. Like the way
I like what they're doing out there.
As of right now, I think those are my first two I send out there. Also, minutes distribution will help by putting those two out there first.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of like lineup, and I know we've spent a fair bit of time, talking about what we predict or what we hope will be the game one lineup. Where are you, obviously, as we're inching closer, which I feel like we've been saying that for the past like week with Mitch Marner coming back and we keep getting Sheldon's. He's day to day from being day to day. Like, dude, just tell us he's out for 2 weeks, man. Like, clearly there was never any intention of him coming back last week. But anyways, when Marner comes back in, line one for you, does it include Mitch Marner if he's playing Saturday?
I have no clue. I have no clue because
I don't think we have any clue what Keefe will be thinking. I'm done with trying to interpret that guy. But if you had your choice, is he line one on Saturday?
Probably.
And then you'd have him with Bert and Austin or Domi?
I'd probably go with Bert.
Bert, Mitch.
And give Bert the number. We haven't seen it since Bert was like complete garbage for the first 25 games. So
right.
This new version of him, I want to see it. But I don't know what that means for Domi.
Yeah, I guess that Domi, JT.
I don't know what that means
Nylander?
I don't know what that means for Nick Robertson, honestly, with Marner coming back.
I
don't know what
I mean, good point. Like who's coming out Saturday?
I have no clue. I don't even know. I'm even more confused what will happen when Yarncroke comes back.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to deal with that yet. So let's not try to make it too difficult on us today. We're just dealing with the Mitch Marner. Like, yeah, he comes back in. It won't be Revo. You're not taking Revo out against the Habs.
Well, maybe against the Habs you would. Maybe.
Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah. Wi-Fi. Never mind. Yeah, never mind.
He ain't coming out. The Canadians have nothing to play for. So
that's at center ice.
Play for 20 minutes.
We're running that at center ice. I don't care.
I think we might see a line brawl. So he ain't coming out. Dewar not coming out. Holmberg? I don't think he'd be coming out, but
no.
Not any of those guys.
Tuesday, I think he's
it's 89.
Keefe solidified Holmberg as that 3C going forward.
I feel that's very likely.
I think he trusts him.
So Nick Robertson
if Nick Robertson goes out there and scores another goal on Saturday, if he stays in the lineup on Saturday, assuming that, he scores another goal, how can you take him out on whatever the next game is, Tuesday?
I know. But like last night, I mean, I know everyone's going to say, well, yeah, finally he didn't score last night, but he also was not very good. He was a -2. He got a little bit of power play time, played almost 14 minutes. I mean, so the opportunity was there and he just didn't do much of anything. And I get it. It's a very tough spot for Robertson. He's going to get a lot of criticism right now because as we kind of get closer to playoffs, you almost need him to show you more than any of the other guys who have a more solidified role. So, yeah, you can say, well, yeah, I know Nick Robertson didn't do anything, but did Domi do any better? Did McMahon or Nylander do any better? I'm like, I hear that, but that's not exactly the point because they already have a spot in the lineup. Nick Robertson, I think even the biggest Nick Robertson truther would have to admit that I don't know, like if he's in the game one lineup. So he really has to score every game pretty much, or he's out.
Yeah, he has to go on some Ovechkin type tear to end the season because I just I don't know.
And it's a high bar, but how else do you play it?
He's taking the spot of somebody I think would be more deserving. You know,
who might play on the PK, like a Holmberg, like a Dewar, like a Yarncroke, right?
Like even McMahon. Is there a chance McMahon plays every single game in the playoffs?
Oh, I thought you were saying
yes, but I think I would take the chance that I don't think he's going to play every single game. I think he would be the kind of guy that would come out to get Robertson in.
Ooh, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not saying McMahon is an automatic, even if he shits the bed. No, I think there is kind of a short leash if he's not playing well. But
like if the offense isn't clicking after 2 games.
But then I would think maybe
games. Would you take out
the offense isn't clicking? I think if the offense isn't clicking, I see Revo or a Yarncroke coming out before McMahon.
No, not Yarncroke. No, because Yarncroke scored 20 before, so he has that offensive upside. Yeah, but I think you would where McMahon is right now on that second line. It's easily interchangeable to say, okay, I'm going to throw Nick Robertson there now.
Okay, I see what you're doing. The obvious replacement if that line isn't clicking. Sure. I just feel in terms of overall impact in the pecking order, I think he's got other guys to jump. I don't think we're already talking about taking McMahon out. I think it's more like, okay, of your guys who are maybe your 11, 12, 13 forward, if we're talking more like Yarncroke, Revo, because I hear the same about Yarncroke. I think had he not got injured, he's a no-doubter in the Game 1 lineup. But now we don't really have a timeline for him to return. So similar to kind of the Lily conversation, if Yarncroke doesn't come back till the last game or two and he doesn't look great, I don't know if he's an automatic in the Game 1 lineup.
Fair.
Especially now that Dewar looks good on the PK, Holmberg looks good. I think Yarncroke, despite the fact that, he has produced decent offensive numbers, at least last year he did. I don't think you could say you need Yarncroke because of X, Y, and Z. I don't know if you have those elements that elevate Yarncroke anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I just think you're right. The stuff that made Yarncroke so valuable has been kind of washed out from the Dewar acquisition, right?
I think so.
Because now you have another speedy center wing hybrid guy that can kill penalties.
A versatile guy, which is exactly why Yarncroke was added. I think it was all about the versatility. He can play center, he can play wing. You can probably have him on your line 2 or line 1, and it doesn't look awful. Or have him on the power play, have him on the PK. But I think we have guys now, you said Dewar, Holmberg. All these guys feel like they can do most, if not all, of what Yarncroke does. And maybe there's that added element where Holmberg and Dewar, depending on the game, I think they've shown they can be more physical than Yarncroke. So for me, I don't know. I don't think Yarncroke is a automatic, especially because of the injury, as I said.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't know if you saw this quote from Austin Matthews talking about Revo, but it just shows me that there's always been that kind of belief in the room that Revo adds something. So this is what he said. He's like, over the last month or so, he's been playing some of his best hockey since he's been here. Matthews says, you see the impact he makes on the ice, the way he plays, his physicality, fighting, and then just on the bench, the energy that he brings in the room and everything like that. It's infectious. In my opinion, he's had a lot more confidence with the puck and has made plays, and he sticks to his game still. He's flying all over the ice. And obviously, when he brings up the physicality, when he makes those hits, you hear the crowd get going.
Yeah.
So, to me, just more proof that he's in the lineup that even if you don't see him making an impact on the ice when he has the puck, which I don't think anyone should have ever expected him to, he's got to be in there. I just love what he brings now.
Matthews is just repeating what I've been harping on for months. I knew when this time came that this time of the year came that it would be all Reaves, and everybody would be like, "Oh man, why did I hate on Reaves in November?"
Yeah.
When games don't matter. But now that the intensity's picking up, the rivalries have been formed and all that. Now you're seeing
There's
how
a lot of people that had to go back and delete some of their tweets. I think it's exactly what we're saying here.
And what I've been saying for a lot of the time, it's like Reaves is old, his knees are shit. He shouldn't play every game, and he won't play every single game. He'll need a couple days off to rest up, right? But when he is out there, he knows, because he's a veteran, he's been around the league, he's been in this role forever. He knows that every time he's out there, he has to make it count. And so every first shift he has, he treats it like it's his last. He goes out there, he throws the body. Like on Monday against Florida, it was first shift, I'm going to lay out Mikkola. And then last night, first shift, it was, I'm going to lay out Hedman, just set the tone.
Well, and that hit on Hedman. Like, Hedman's a big dude, and Revo just pancaked him. Like, Hedman dropped like a sack of potatoes that I don't think I've ever seen. I mean, Hedman takes some hits or whatever, but like not to make him like crumple to the ground like that to the ice. That was crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love what Revo brings. He brings a different kind of intensity, and the guys love it. Right. So
you can tell. Yeah. You can tell he gets the crowd going. And I don't know, like, I think fans maybe might overlook that element, especially if they somehow do get home ice and then we have game one at home. That element of getting the crowd behind you is a pretty big deal. And we talk about how it feels like a library at Scotiabank most games. You have someone like Revo out there in game one, throwing some hits early on, first couple shifts, it makes a difference.
It's going to liven up the building for sure.
Yeah.
And exactly. The rest of the team will feed off that. All that energy that he brings. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how, with Mitch Marner in, how that like changes how the team plays. And I don't want to harp too much on it, because we know we need Marner in the lineup, and he's very valuable to this team. We need him in there and going. But I just worry about that now, because now you're talking about, instead of having, whether it was a Bertuzzi or a McMahon or a Domi or a Nyes out every shift, now it's more like, okay, one shift you're going to have Nylander, then the next you're going to have Marner, which is basically what we've seen with this team throughout. And you don't know if you're going to maintain that intensity, because two of your guys on those lines
there's different kinds of intensity. Doesn't just have to be an in-your-face kind of game. Intensity can be dominating the puck in the offensive zone. Just a long
need to do that.
Of cycle play, 45 seconds to a minute of just offensive zone cycle, shot from the point,
100%.
Good traffic. Like, I think there's different kinds of intensity. I don't expect Marner to go out there and throw 7 hits.
He won't ever do that. Exactly. No, and I'm with you. If they're doing that, like if they're controlling the puck, if they've got possession in the offensive zone for their 45-second shift or what have you, no issues. But what we've seen from this team, and I think it's hard to argue in past playoffs, where those guys, when they're out there, there might not be tilting the ice as much as you need them to. And then you throw out the third line. In the past, it's been like, whether it's Yarncroke, Engvall, Kerfoot, Zach Aston Reese, and those guys ain't doing squat. So then it's like there's so much more pressure on the Marners and Nylanders when you're out there. And if you don't tuck one in, the team's done.
And that's what I think this team has maybe a little different, is that you now, instead of a Kerfoot Engvall, you have a Nyes and a Domi,
Holmberg,
where you have McMahon, like these secondary scoring guys who are actually have proven this season that they're able to put the puck in the net when we need them to.
Exactly.
So
and this is kind of just
different.
For sure. And that was really just my plea for Sheldon Keefe to maybe take down the minutes of Marner and Nylander, spread them out a little bit more, because I don't know if I want to see, like, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing one of Marner and Nylander, and I won't get it, I know that, but I would want to see Marner or Nylander maybe on like the third line. And maybe it's not so much a third line, more like a 2A, 2B.
Yeah.
But I don't know. if Keefe is going to put Marner back with Matthews, which I feel he will at some point, whether it's Saturday or not, who knows? But I feel he eventually will do that. And then if you have Nylander with JT, it just feels like you're, again, expecting to sink or swim with those two guys as your, elite wingers who you need to have heroic efforts in the postseason. Whereas if you did something like Burt, Matthews, Domi, then maybe Marner, JT, and Nyes or McMahon. And then whoever from there, McMahon, Nyes, Holmberg, Nylander. I feel that makes you a much harder team to defend.
Yeah.
I just don't think people do.
Of having spreading it out across 3 lines. I'd need to see it in the regular season before just sprouting it out in the playoffs. But I wouldn't mind seeing it for a game or two and seeing how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, you'd probably have to
at all.
You'd probably have to call Paul Marner and ask him to approve it.
No, Marner doesn't have to be the guy that goes down to the third line. I think if anything,
Marner or Nylander,
it would be Nylander that would drop down just because I feel like Nylander has more. He would be able to have more chemistry with the other Swedes. If he was playing with, say, a Jarnkrok,
Holmberg, even maybe Holmberg, Nyes. I mean,
and Marner would be really beneficial to JT's game. I know Tavares has looked really good lately, but
100%.
He'll be really beneficial to just balancing out Tavares more.
Yeah, for sure, the McMahon, JT, Nylander line has looked pretty decent, but not the last couple games, unfortunately. So I just don't know if that's your line 2 that you expect to get a lot out of.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see how that goes. One more thing that I don't know if you've been paying too much attention or trying to call your shot yet. Have you been thinking about who you would have for some of the NHL awards yet? Like Hart Trophy? Who are your 3 for the Hart Trophy?
My 3 would be McDavid, McKinnon, Kucherov, but Matthews, if he gets 70, would sneak in there somehow. And then for Norris, I'd have Yossi winning the Norris.
Yossi?
I'd have Yossi winning the Norris.
Over Makar and Quinn?
Yes, because I look at what he's done with that Nashville team, 100%. Not even a question.
He's been the best D-man since January, no doubt.
He has more goals than both of them, and they're all kind of equivalent in points, and he's making the biggest impact, in my opinion.
It's a good take. I'm not opposed to that. I had Yossi in my 3. I was kind of thinking that the lean would be Makar and Quinn Hughes, but I could get behind that.
I don't think that he'll win it, but definitely those 3. Then I'd have Hellebuck winning the Vezina.
I think so. I think the only guy that
there has a couple votes as well, but Hellebuck will win it.
Yeah, I think with the Demko injury, I think that kind of made Hellebuck lose. Yeah.
And then I think probably
Bobrovsky might get in there.
Yeah, maybe.
But he won't win it.
And then Calder will be obviously Bedard.
For sure. Has to be Bedard.
And then,
how about Coach? Coach?
Well, if Washington makes playoffs, I think it should be Carberry.
Carberry to win. I he'll get some votes. I
think it should be Carberry or Torts, but I think it will be Tocchet in Vancouver.
Yeah, I have Tocchet, Jim Montgomery, and either Pete DeBoer or Pierre Laviolette.
Montgomery won it last year, and his team got worse. So,
yeah, but they might still be the top point team in the league. Like Boston's at
but I think what Vancouver's accomplished is more impressive.
Yeah, I wouldn't put him. That's true. I wouldn't put him in over Tocchet. And I guess that is a good point. Unless they are the first overall team, because Montgomery won it last year, I think they're trying to get some new faces in there. So I'd go like Tocchet. I think DeBoer or Peter Laviolette. I think either of those guys would be a good ad. I think
I don't like
Brindamore could get votes.
Like, there's a President's Trophy. We don't need the best coach shouldn't go to the best team. I don't think that's exactly always the case.
No, I think like who expected the Bruins to be where they are? Like everyone thought they would fall off. Who expected
the Capitals to be where they are? Who expected the Flyers with losing their starting goalie and all the turmoil in Flyerland
I think Torts was like kind of a heavy favorite halfway through the year. I don't know if some of these recent issues with like Sean Couturier, I think some people be like, I'm not voting for him. He's just too big of a dick.
Fair.
I think he might be on the outside, but yeah, he's done a great job. So I agree with that. Carberry, yeah, I wasn't even including him, but I think you have to make a case if Washington gets in. It just become like that race for the final wild card spot in the East has become such a complete shit show. It's almost like I don't think we should let an 8th team into the playoffs at this point. I don't think any of them deserve it now.
I want to see Ovi. I want to see Ovi in there. But
yeah, for sure.
If Pittsburgh's making this late run, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing it. Show me it.
Those teams are allowing like New Jersey.
I wouldn't mind Flyers falling out because I know they'll get swept. Flyers fall out. Caps move into the 3. Pittsburgh gets to that second wild card spot. That's what I want.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me that the Isles and the Pens still have life now just because they've won 2 in a row.
Even the Devils still do.
No.
They've lost 2 in a row now, but
they've lost 3 in a row. They're at 76 now.
Yeah. So they're kind of falling out, but they're still alive, I guess.
Yeah, because they've played the most games too. Like them in Buffalo played 76. Pens have played 75 now, but obviously only 3 points back. Caps feel like they're the front runner because they still have 8 games left and 82 points. The Wings have already played 75, so they're going to be hard pressed to make it. It's crazy how bad those teams are, but one of them has to get in. and then just looking at the West right now, like I don't know if you caught the Edmonton-Dallas game last night, but that was a rough one if you're an Oiler fan. They
Especially since
absolutely
they're right there.
demolished.
They're right there.
And they lost 5-0, got shut out, and it looks more and more like they're playing Vegas in round 1. I think McDavid.
Don't love that.
Don't love that if you're an Oiler fan. I think they might be done. I think the Jets and Oilers are both out in round 1 because the Jets are playing Colorado.
Yep. I told you the Jets are frauds. I told you a few weeks ago. I told you they're frauds.
Yeah, and in my defense, I only like the Jets if they were going to win their division. If they could avoid Dallas or Colorado in round 1, that's the only way I like them. Other than that, I think they're done.
Yeah. It looks like
the only hope.
Cavs, so that's going to be. I think that'll be a quick one. 5 or I think it'll be in 5, but you could say 6.
Yeah, I mean it's fair to say the only hope for Canada right now is the blue and white. Right. Yeah. And then of course every non-Leaf fan will be like, "Oh, you think Florida's going to be any easier for you guys?" So I think it's fair all around. I think all the Canadian teams are going to have a very challenging round 1.
Yep.
I mean, I think even Vancouver
against Nashville.
Kings or Nashville. I think he lost his internet connection. Will he make it back? Yeah, I think Vancouver is going to have a tough go. But all the Canadian teams will definitely be in tough. We'll see if he's able to get his feed back in here or if we've lost him for good. But obviously in terms of the look ahead, Canadians Saturday night in Montreal. Almost it's never a must win at this point in the year where you feel like you're already in and clinched. But the Leafs definitely would be nice if they could clinch a playoff spot with a win against the Habs. I think that would be nice for all Leaf fans in terms of bragging rights and maybe being able to keep all the chirping from the Habs loyal fan base. So it would be nice to get that dub and get things going in the right direction with clinching a spot. So hopefully we get that going in a big dub on Saturday. I think Justin's computer is dead. So we will kind of end it here. Leaf fans, again, if you guys haven't found us yet or you're just watching this after the recording, come check us out. We're on the Chilltown Hoops YouTube page. You can also find it on Sports Fluent, Facebook, and Twitter. If you enjoy the show, drop a comment. Let us know maybe what you'd like to see. We'd love to have you drop a comment here or even come aboard and join us for a live discussion. So appreciate all the support and go Leafs go. Have a good one.